I made a video about the Utah Jazz after they started 3-0, and my reaction to the way they started the season was generally skeptical, and maybe that was because I had predicted they would be terrible to start the year. I will clarify once again, my prediction of them being terrible was based more on who their ownership is and what this man might do throughout a season like this where he has a bunch of random pieces, a bunch of unknown quantities, and a special prospect on the horizon. Everybody knows that there is one pick, and specifically one number one pick in the last several years, maybe decades, that just matters more than all the other ones. Yeah, Anthony Edwards, Zion, Paolo, Cade, exciting players, exciting talents, and probably some superstar, multi-all-star guys right there, but are any of those guys Victor Wembanyama? The hype would lead y'all to believe that maybe not. Maybe Victor Wembanyama is more so worth tanking for than any of these other guys. But this video is not about Victor, and I want to kind of keep it away from him as much as I can. I know that he's very relevant when we're talking about a team like the Utah Jazz, especially how they start, and I don't care what Danny Ainge says, if this was the plan to be really good out of nowhere. No, it wasn't. Like, we know what you were looking at when you started the season with this team, when you traded your 2 star players away, basically your core besides Mike Conley and Jordan Clarkson. You knew what you were doing. This was not the plan to start 9-3. And before we start jumping into the Jazz or a playoff team, I just want to remind y'all, last year the Washington Wizards started 10-3. This is not me saying that this year's Jazz are last year's Wizards, because I don't think that's the case. Last year's Wizards, take a look at who they had on their squad. You have a star player, you have some decent role players, there's not much else here, good depth, and at the beginning of the year, just a lot of great balance in scoring, team play. You can draw similarities to the Utah Jazz. And the Wizards were beating good teams to start the year. And I know it sounds like such a distant memory, probably in the back of your head. Yeah, the Wizards, they were good to start the year. They were a top seed at the end of the first month of the season or whatever. They beat Toronto on the road, Boston on the road and at home. They beat Memphis, Atlanta, Milwaukee as part of that initial stretch, which in retrospect, absolutely unbelievable. Beal gets hurt. This team could have been a lot better if Beal didn't get hurt, and we all just remember that they completely fell off after this. I think the big difference between the Jazz and the Wizards is the amount of veteran experience on this team. This is a huge reason why the Jazz are able to flourish. They have a great combination of younger and older players. And the younger guys on this team are not players that the Jazz drafted. They're players that were given up on by at least one team. Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, Talen Horton-Tucker, Jared Vanderbilt is still pretty young player. So there's just a combination of younger players with a chip on their shoulder and these older veteran guys who are in a place where they can be great mentors. They understand the game and how it is played at a high level, at the highest level in the league. Like these guys, Clarkson, Conley, Olynyk, all have sufficient playoff experience. And another thing I will add that I don't think is being talked about, the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell Jazz were so confined into a system that had to play a specific way. Like they were not unleashing players like the role players the way they could. They looked at the way their team was designed and they said, you know what, we're just going to shoot a ton of threes. On defense, we're going to funnel everything into the paint because we have the greatest interior presence in the league. They played one way on both ends of the floor, and that way worked so well for them. It worked so well building around Gobert and hiding his deficiencies. But when you get to the playoffs, of course, it's a different type of ball. And you can't just play one way both ends and they get exposed every year, even when they were the 1 seed. Like they had a great team, but they were not used to playing in a lot of different ways. Think about what a guy like Jordan Clarkson's doing this year. He's having arguably a career year, coming off a season where he really struggled with efficiency. Like we know the guy can shoot the 3, and he is shooting the 3 at a record clip for him, 42%. I don't expect this to hold for the whole year. That's 10 whole percentage points up from last year, which is an unbelievable jump. We know the guy can get hot, hotter than fish grease, as Mark Jones likes to say, but he can also be cold, and he can also chuck up shots. We saw it last year, but the most impressive thing about Clarkson is that he's doubled his assist average, and he's operating pick and roll as a facilitating guard in a lot of cases, which is just something you never saw from him before. There's just a level of freedom that a guy like him is given the chance to play with after having to play a very specific fashion in these previous Jazz offenses. Of course, we have to address just the idea that a lot of teams early in the season are looking at this team on their schedule thinking that's an easy win. We don't even have to prep for that game because no one's worried with all of the acquisitions and the teams building their rosters going into this next year. The Jazz are one of those teams. Yeah, they're in the tankathon. There's a lot of teams to worry about in the NBA, but the Jazz, they're not one of them, right? That's just like the mindset of whoever's seeing them on their schedule to start the year. They're able to catch Denver, Minnesota off guard. They get another OT win against New Orleans. How about beating Memphis in a back-to-back? They hung with the Mavericks. They hang in a game in Dallas. They can't pull it out, but then they run through both LA teams, come back home, and just absolutely smack the Lakers last night to get them to 9-3. And so we can see this team has not lost a home game. They're now 5-0 at home. That Jazz home atmosphere, it is serious, it is strong, but I think this stretch coming up will decide what this team is. I said in my last Jazz video, I was skeptical. 30 games in, this team is not above 500. That's what I said. Well, they have some tough games. They're gonna get a stretch in December where they play a lot of home games. They get like 8 out of 9 games at home at the beginning of December, which is gonna give them, it's probably gonna have them over 500. I wasn't looking at their schedule when I said that, but their next 3 games, they're at Atlanta, at Washington, at Philly. I am high on Atlanta. I am high on Philly without Harden, because I think they just know how to play better at this point. And Washington, but at home, you can give any team a chance to win a game at home. I don't know if it depends if Beal is playing in that game. But you have 3 road games in a row. And in general, 7 out of your next 9 games are on the road. And then after that, you get to play a ton of home games. But this is a huge test for this Jazz team. This is a Jazz team that has looked amazing so far. That Denver loss, their biggest of the year. Other than that, they haven't lost by more than 6 in a game. And the offense in the last couple games has just been absolutely ridiculous. They are currently going into Atlanta with a 4-3 road record. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after that. But I'm impressed with so much. I could talk about the coaching, the ball movement. It really does look like they love playing together and like they've built a great culture. One of my favorite league pass teams to watch because they haven't been on national television, I don't believe. Because why would the NBA think they would be a reasonable team to put on national television? And then you see them play and it's like, oh my God, I really hope they do get some games soon. Because like I said, I don't know how long this team is going to be together like this. Right now, they are incredibly fun to watch. Those last couple games without their best defensive player, Jared Vanderbilt, and it didn't matter at all. Their offense just got better, is what happened. Clarkson is shooting the lights out. Lauri Markkanen is like the star of the team, quote unquote, but this is the kind of team that really, to me, doesn't really have a star. Me saying that is not trying to take away anything from Lauri Markkanen. It's more about the pecking order and the way that these guys view each other. Like, he might be the guy that gets the most shots. He is the best player on this team so far. If a Utah Jazz player makes the All-Star team, which at the way they're playing right now, one would have to. He would make the All-Star game as the representative from this team. But when I say I don't think this team has a star, it's more about there not being a face of the team. Like, it is a team. Someone I was talking to today said they're like a college team. Like, it's about the team. It's not about one guy. They have so many different guys that can get double figures. Look at these box scores that they've been putting up. How many guys are cracking double figures? 8 points, 15 points. The balance is an incredible thing, and I love to see it. And the more that this sustains, the better this is for the game of basketball, the NBA game. So, you know, Danny Ainge, I really am curious to see what he's thinking because he knows he can get something for these pieces. I said this in the previous video, them playing this well is not necessarily bad because the value of these pieces are being driven up. You can still tank if you want to. You might have to make a move in the next 20 games. Like, I did think he was going to do something in the first 30 games of the year. So he's still got a little bit of time, but I kind of don't want to see him make a move just for the sake of the game. Like, I know it might not be the best interest of their long-term success, but this is a fun team, man. And I enjoy watching them a lot. It doesn't really matter if a guy misses a game, like I said about Vanderbilt. There is just a next man up mentality, incredible team mentality, that it's just an amazing thing that you can create in their first season with this team, a team of completely new faces aside from just a couple guys. Developing chemistry could have been a nightmare. When you look at the guys on paper, how many guys are going to need shots? How are they even going to play together? It has been just a complete opposite of what a lot of people, including myself, thought it would be. Even though I can admit this team had quality players on it, I could never have imagined what is happening right now. It is incredible, like Cinderella story stuff, and I just want to see more of it. At 9-3, gonna get some road tests here. We'll see where they go from there, but yeah, exciting stuff. That's gonna do it. Bucketology.